But I think that for me, the hero that inspired me, and he's not typically considered a hero by a lot of people, is Plato, the philosopher Plato. And Plato is a person that people often kind of get forced to read in intro freshman seminars in college. He's a famous name, founder of Western philosophy and yada, yada. But Plato, actually, speaking of your Sicily connection, Plato was also this great man of action. He's a great risk taker. He's a great entrepreneur. And he founded a school, and he founded a kind of school that didn't exist before. Like before Plato, there was no idea of like a philosophical school where you could go and study philosophy. And Plato because Socrates was his teacher, the famous Athenian philosopher going around bothering people in the street, asking them about, what principles they base their life off of. And Plato was a student of Socrates, but Socrates didn't really have a school or a set of doctrines. He was just like a very charismatic teacher. Plato kind of turned Socrates into a brand.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that he founded his school is by going to Sicily. And there were, at the time in Sicily, the island was ruled mostly by the city of Syracuse, the most influential city, Syracusa, and it was ruled by tyrants in Plato's day. Dionysius the First was this, kind of like the Mussolini of the 4th century BC, kind of charming, frightening, incredibly powerful. But Plato visited the court of Dionysius because Dionysius was interested in having literary men around him. He's interested in having artists, and poets, and thinkers. And so Plato kind of goes on an invitation, and he tells some stories and makes some connections, but it's like a very disappointing experience for him at the end of the day, because he sees it's kind of shallow. There's just like a lot of hedonistic partying and orgies and fancy feasts, and it's just not his scene. But he meets a couple of people there that he ends up developing lifelong relationships with. And he comes back 20 years later as like a middle-aged man. And he ends up kind of becoming a tutor to the son of the tyrant, Dionysius II, who, the guy's uncle became Plato's friend. And there was like some hope that this kid was, moldable according to the teachings of philosophy, that he would like bring about more liberty for his state, like that he would be a kind of enlightened monarch instead of a despot. And Plato took a lot of reputational risk on that. And he traveled, from Athens to Sicily is a very dangerous sea journey. There's pirates and there's hostile forces. And Plato just invested a lot in these relationships because he was trying to build a brand. He was trying to start a movement. He was interested in like getting good people in political office in Greece. And I think that, if Plato weren't to come back today, at least what we could do is learn from his example that like philosophers, I think, and intellectuals who have something to teach us, we should expect them to like have some skin in the game, stake something on it. Because so many of our teachers today have these kind of secure salaries and comfortable positions, and they don't have to, face any
consequences,
real threat or consequences. If their teachings are stupid or useless or pernicious, nobody holds them accountable or even cares.
Right.
I think that this was very different from the way that it was in the ancient world, where all of the philosophers, all of the intellectuals are basically solopreneurs. There's no institution to give you a salary. There's no endowment. It's just you preaching what you've got to offer. And do people listen to you? Do people keep coming back because it works, or do they not? And I wish that I think we might be entering that age with the new media and the institutions of the universities sort of losing credibility. And that might be a good thing.
Yeah. What's interesting too is, I don't know, I obviously didn't go to the school you did, but it's interesting how some of the schools just almost are scrapping the idea of just all these historical people who've done these amazing things, who are amazing leaders, and they're scrapping them because it's just like, there isn't enough care to actually learn about it, because it's just, it's not what we do today. You know what I mean? So it's like people's ideas are changing, and it's like, it could be bad or it can get worse, or it can be okay, but it's interesting how like just the ideas of people, like, it's always that one person that just changes something, and then there's like a ripple effect, that just like, oh, but we want to get, all these leaders out. And it's just like, it's even today's culture. It's like, you look at the presidential things and just what's going on. It's just like, we want to kick people out. We want to like, we don't want these people in, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to name names here, but like, you see a lot of that, you see a lot of that, let's get people, let's suppress the good and let's bring out the bad almost, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, if people don't know history and if they are insecure about their status in the world, they're easier to manipulate. So somebody's profiting off of that weakness.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think, the thing that we can all do, women and men, I think men in particular, is like become the best version of ourselves and not give into that weakness.
Right.
And, if there's one habit that I think you see in so many of the great figures of history, not just the ancients, but, people like Alexander Hamilton or Napoleon, Nietzsche, Frederick Douglass, really across the political spectrum, they devote some time every day to a kind of almost like a reverential, like, devotion of reading about men that they admire and studying their words, taking down notes in a commonplace book, copy down a quote from this guy or like an episode in his life and just try to learn it, like really meditate on the people you want to be like. Napoleon clearly doing this with Alexander and Caesar, and Hamilton with Julius Caesar as well, and other figures from the past. And so like this, you can self-educate. Hamilton's mostly self-educated. Napoleon, most of like the education that he got in oratory and kind of the conqueror spirit was, his own practice, reading books after hours. I think that we can seize a lot of that back, that we maybe weren't given by our institutions. And I'm suffered from this myself. I went through a public school education in Texas, and it really kind of left me dry.
Yeah.
It didn't really give me any moral formation to speak of, or none that was good, I think. So,
yeah.
I think there is hope.
Yeah.